Well, last time I spoke a little bit about Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And looked at that and how we approach today's challenges together. How we might approach what we're going through and envision a kingdom of heaven or a kingdom of God that we can co-inhabit. And the key to that is imagination, and that is the topic today that I'm choosing. According to Unity, imagination is the ability to image, picture, conceptualize, envision, and dream. Right now, I think that we need people who can imagine a new world, new ways of making things work. So I think of people like Walt Disney, Gene Roddenberry, J.K. Rowling, or George Lucas, all of whom invented new worlds that engage us. Disney realized people wanted not just to see movies, but to live within them, to bring that 2D experience into our dimension. And so he created something that everybody said would fail, called Disneyland, where you could walk around. And that was so successful that he planned and other people realized the dream of Walt Disney World, which is twice the size of Manhattan and remains the top vacation destination on planet Earth. This world based on our imagination. Consider our first cell phones, which looked a lot like the communicators on Star Trek. Or even sliding electric doors, which didn't exist before that show. They actually had people pulling ropes backstage to make those work. Star Wars fired us up so much that we can now visit a planet in the Star Wars galaxy and walk around in it, seemingly separate from the planet we say that we walk upon. And think of the so-called live photos on our phones, which move a little bit when we touch them, much like the pictures in the halls of Hogwarts. Now, in all these cases, someone captured our imaginations, and we wanted to live in that world, so life imitated art. And so, what can we imagine? Today, I want to look at Albert Einstein, who used his imagination not to create a new world, but to discover the one we live in now. He employed what he called thought experiments, imagining himself floating in an elevator to explore the nature of gravity, or moving on a train while lightning strikes to investigate relativity. His ideas were so radical that at first no one wanted to even read them. They were so laughably absurd. But we now live in Einstein's universe. His ideas have been repeatedly confirmed over the past century. He didn't invent a fiction, but rather, using his own imagination, he saw that we were living in a Newtonian fiction of 3 dimensions with a force called gravity. Fiction. He saw beyond our collective fiction to the reality that is now officially endorsed as true. He saw, famously, that mass is energy, with that most famous equation of all time, E equals mc squared, which means energy is equal to mass times the speed of light squared. And the speed of light is 186,282 miles per second. Square that number. So a lot of energy is contained in every little bit of mass, proving in a literal way the notion that we are the light of the world, we are energy itself. He showed that space and time form a web, like a net. And when a planet is in the middle of this net, it depresses it so that other objects are drawn to it, giving the appearance of gravity. Space and time curve. And the practical manifestations of his discoveries range from the paper towel to the superconductors we use in computers, to television, and yes, tragically, the atomic bomb. All of these came to us because Einstein's imagination produced new knowledge, or collectively agreed upon facts. Then, people used that knowledge and applied their imaginations, sometimes to help humanity, and sometimes to literally destroy it, much to his personal horror. So remember, imagination is not always a force for what we call good. It must be paired with our powers of wisdom and love to be beneficial. The talk today is based on a famous quote of Einstein: "Imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we now know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand." Now, in researching this topic, I discovered an online debate about this premise. It was stated as a question: is imagination more important than knowledge? And you were to answer yes or no and then give your reasons. Now, many people said yes, of course, but a surprising number disagreed strongly, and they had great derision in their answers. My two favorite quotes from those in the no camp were, "Imagination is stupid and useless. Grow up, because this is the real world." And, "Everybody who said yes is essentially an idiot." Now, I'm not sure the person who said that knew they were calling Albert Einstein an idiot. But the error these people make, I think, is in assuming you can only choose one or the other. But that's not what Einstein's statement says. In fact, we need both. And given that both exist, imagination is the precursor to knowledge. It creates it. There is an unfortunate myth out there that Einstein failed math and was simply full of imagination, which is not true. He was brilliant and excelled in math and science from an early age, at least partly because they were his passion. Now, yes, he did frustrate teachers with his way out there questions and his refusal to accept certain norms, but he had lots of knowledge. And he worked hard. He applied his imagination to his existing knowledge while also seeing beyond it, knowing which parts he could, in effect, replace. So today's talk is not meant to diminish the importance of knowledge. In fact, imagination without knowledge can be extremely dangerous. Ignorance allows superstition, prejudice, and raw emotion to feed our imaginings. We get worrying, we get conspiracy theories, right? Einstein was not diminishing the value of knowledge. He was saying that imagination is the way to acquire new knowledge. What distinguished Einstein from his well-educated, highly intelligent colleagues was his ability to follow his curiosity much further than most of us could ever fathom. If we look at all human knowledge, every understanding we have of the Big Bang, of electricity or superconductors and computers, it all had to be imagined into existence, thinking beyond the box of existing knowledge. Just consider the creative content of any one moment in life, and it is staggering. We invented each of the words that I am now speaking. The podium here, the carpets, the electricity in the lights, glass in the windows. Those particular chairs were invented based on previous versions of chairs, no doubt, and yet distinct. Our clothes, our phones, our concepts, I could go on and on and on. We can forget the tremendous imagination that has gone into the world that we've inherited. Knowledge, then, is the accumulated distillation of what already is, while imagination points to what is possible. Unity minister Linda Martella Whitsett, in her book Divine Audacity, says, "Studies have proven that our brains are preset to see what we're looking for, which means we continuously create more of the familiar. However, Our prefrontal cortex, a recent evolutionary development, gives us the capacity to envision possibilities beyond our present knowledge. By this power, we can leap from what is to what can be. Think of that famous quote, "Some men see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were and say, why not?" Bobby Kennedy quoting George Bernard Shaw. And this notion of going on automatic and continuously recreating the familiar can be seen as a kind of reincarnation, as Eckhart Tolle pointed out. Our lack of imagination keeping us in a cycle of suffering or samsara. I see that in the world today. We don't know how to make this work. We feel trapped. I've noticed that those who devalue imagination often see the world as fixed and cruel, a kind of fundamentalist prison, whether it's religious fundamentalism or scientific fundamentalism, where what you see is what you get, period. A life without imagination is miserable, fixed, and unchangeable. It's truly a kind of hell. Knowledge tends to be binary and dualistic, because either you're right or wrong, so it appeals to those who need absolutes and disdain shades of gray. Some people will even invent certainties, knowledge about the afterlife and our souls, for example, just to avoid the kind of uncertainty that many of us might feel about the meaning of it all and where we are in the universe. It's better just to know and ask no questions. Einstein faced this kind of intransigence in his own life, not just in his scientific world, but of course within Germany. Imagination, by definition, has no limits, no binary. It's open-ended and appeals to those who like the unknown and see it as an adventure. Now, is anyone here watching the show Severance?
Oh, God, yes.
Right? Well, it presents our world back to us in a chilling and extremely imaginative way, using fiction to show us who we are, what we grapple with. It's definitely about big questions, but you're not always going to get the answers. They're intriguing questions. We certainly grapple with big questions here. I think if religious movements fall along the spectrum of adherence to knowledge and openness to imagination, unity would probably be one of the most open to imagination, while still being grounded in principles that we find helpful. We are open to change, it seems to me, but we are not whatever you say goes, right? It is a balance. And we all live on that spectrum. Those times we want the binary of the right and the wrong, definite world, and times we want the freedom of open-ended exploration. But let's be clear, relativity has often been blamed for the modern notion that anything goes, nothing is fixed, it's all relative. But that is truly a gross oversimplification. Einstein sought out order in the universe, the laws that govern it. And he used the analogy of a child in a library to capture this quest, that we are like children in a library full of books in languages we can't understand. But we sense there's a mysterious order to it all. He said, that, it seems to me, is the attitude of the most intelligent human beings toward God. We see the universe marvelously arranged and obeying certain laws, but only dimly understand these laws. Einstein wanted to discover the laws, the truth. He had a strong disdain for quantum physics with all of its uncertainty, favoring the notion instead of an ordered universe. God does not play dice, he famously quipped. His spirituality was very close, it seems to me, to the unity way of thinking, favoring God as energy and totality rather than a person. Around 1930, Einstein spoke of two predominant forms of religion, both having an essentially anthropomorphic God. One form based in fear, one in a desire for social guidance through life. He then adds, quote, Only exceptionally gifted individuals or especially noble communities rise essentially above this level. In these, there is found a third level of religious experience, even if it is seldom found in a pure form. I will call it the cosmic religious sense. This is hard to make clear to those who do not experience it, since it does not involve an anthropomorphic idea of God. The individual feels the vanity of human desires and aims, and the nobility and marvelous order which are revealed in nature and in the world of thought. He feels the individual destiny as an imprisonment and seeks to experience the totality of existence as a unity full of significance. Indications of this cosmic religious sense can be found in earlier levels of development, for example, in the Psalms of David and the prophets. The religious geniuses of all times have been distinguished by this cosmic religious sense, which recognizes neither dogmas nor God made in man's image. End quote. Well, like most of you, I assume the cosmic religious sense is the one I favor. In 1930, Einstein felt it would be difficult to capture this cosmic sense in any formal organization, but he said that the arts provided a link to it and could serve to connect us to this higher realm. And I say, yes, that is true, and I think it's vital to come here to explicitly discuss and practice this way, this paradigm of life. We're fortunate beyond measure to have this laboratory of new thought. We are what I call spiritually privileged. Now, you might be asking, how does all of this speak to us in our everyday life? I hope today is not simply a lecture about a famous scientist and his curious ways. I always look for the practical application. So here's an example of how imagination made an impact in my life. A few years ago, I participated in a workshop at Unity of New York with Reverend Jackie Fernandez. She asked us to think of someone we had a long-standing difference with and to tell that story to someone else in the normal first-person way. So I spoke about a feeling that a close friend didn't make any effort to contact me. It was all one-sided. I really allowed my resentment to express itself. Then she asked us to tell the same story from the third person. And it became a bit more objective, with a little less emotion, but still related the same basic facts. Now, then she said something that really took my breath away. She said, now tell the same story from the perspective of your Christ consciousness, go. Well, I paused just for a moment to switch into that mood, but then tears immediately formed. I spoke slowly and deliberately about two people who had trouble showing their love. That this had gone back a number of years and how each was in pain around it. It was compassionate and matter of fact, all at the same time, and tears flowed down my face and of the face of the person listening. It felt profound. And in the years since then, I have felt a change in our relationship. The way we relate feels different, and my resentment is way lower. It's a process, of course, but the movement has been notable. I think I was set in the knowledge of how this was. I had my facts down, and I reiterated them to many people, thereby strengthening them and solidifying them not only in my own consciousness, but in those listening too. That is why gossip is so damaging. False ideas planted in many people's brains about someone else. Not the truth. I had never stopped to imagine this from a divine perspective. And that shift affected me more deeply than I recognized at the time. In fact, it's a way I can see any situation. Although, like most people, I resist that opportunity most of the time, because being right is so important to me and to so many of us so often. We think we know how things are, why people do what they do, etc., etc., etc. As an actor, I was trained to imagine other realities. To paraphrase Sanford Meisner, acting is telling the truth under imaginary circumstances. Love that. People sometimes say to me, "You're an actor, you're a great liar." No, I'm not. When you're acting, everyone out here knows that you're not. I don't think it's the truth. I'm telling the truth under imaginary circumstances, right? In my normal life, in any situation, why not tell the truth from the divine perspective, the highest power and voice I can imagine, to act as that? We can let go of negative thoughts that we hold and lean into the positive, life-affirming beliefs we hear here. We can begin to imagine another life for ourselves and trust that we'll find it, as Einstein trusted he'd find solutions to the greatest mysteries. We can exercise spiritual curiosity, spiritual imagination. And as we consider our outlook on the world, we can ask, from what base of knowledge, of knowing, do we imagine? For example, when we see the news, we're told this is reality. As Walter Cronkite used to say, that's the way it is. And with that fixed in our brains as the truth of the world, we imagine new worlds based on that dystopia. The work we do here matters because we articulate and reach toward a new knowledge, one based in capital T, truth. We look at the universe of the inner world and seek peace within, knowing we can then bring that into the outside world. The time we spend praying and meditating builds this new solid foundation from which to imagine the next better world, for us and for those around us. Remember, Gandhi meditated for an entire month before imagining his breakthrough idea of marching to get salt, an idea that literally changed the world. When we pray, we imagine, we see beyond facts to truth. We pull the camera back for the widest possible shot that we can conceive, and we imagine the best, the highest and best for all involved. We declare goodness. Looking around us today, the collected knowledge of the world is staggering and proudly displayed, but the spiritual knowledge on display is often quite primitive, it seems to me. We are called to imagine and practice a higher spirituality that does not dominate and demean, but that calls us all back together as one. When we disagree with someone strongly and begin to see them as the other, can we imagine how they got this way and feel compassion for them, even while articulating a better vision and inviting them into it, as Gandhi and King both did? To imagine justice without revenge, to imagine progress for all, rather than at the expense of anyone. Now, this is hard, but I would say necessary. We don't have to see the suffering around us and accept it as given as part of just the way it is, as if poverty and cruelty are facts we must accept in ourselves and others. Remember, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We're here to know something better as a lived reality. So let's rally our formidable spiritual resources and imagine a cosmic sense that reconnects us all. Remember, Einstein's last unsolved mystery was the notion of a unified field that connects everything. So let's be the articulation of that unified field. First, perhaps as something we imagine, and ultimately as something we know. And of course, we begin here, by imagining unity into our living truth. Thank you.